Hello everyone, we are back in City Skylines in Aurelia. So, last time we moved to the part of the city where the main railway leaves into the industrial zone, which we also revisited in the last episode and did some changes around it. Today, we will build next to the public transport hub, where we prepared a train station with light rail and trams around it and start building a big high-tech industrial zone. So let's go. So this industrial zone is going to be right on the tip of this peninsula, I think, that's originating from that suburb area of the city, but that's not really important. What's kind of important is that this place is quite difficult with the elevation, with the terrain, because we built that stacked bridge, or the road leading from the stacked bridge is actually quite high on top of the terrain and even the water level. And that public transport hub is also positioned quite high. So we need to obviously work around that, but at the same time, it's just a good opportunity to do the industrial zone a bit more vertical. So it's going to have a couple of levels, so that's what I'm already preparing right here. This building that I'm using in here, I'm not really sure what it's called. I think it's something with high-tech something. I'm not really sure. I had it for the longest time. I already downloaded it, I think, when I was building that original industrial zone. And I thought that I'm going to use this to expand it in some different areas. But I never did, like you could have seen in the last episode. So we are going to use it here instead and just couple it with some more of these interesting looking kind of high-tech buildings. So I'm mostly going to stay away from, well, not completely, but from some of those big logistical warehouses. I wanted to place them in here, but then I decided that it's probably going to be much better to just do something, I don't know, futuristic more or something like that. Anyway, one more thing that we need to do in here is to also finish the light rail, because that's not ending by that public transport hub. There's just like a second to last station in there, which is probably going to be more heavily used than this one. This one is basically just a station where we're going to have the loop for the light rails as well. But people working in the industrial zone are obviously going to use this one more than the public transport itself. Even though I am going to revisit that that pedestrian path that's leading into this entire general area, so people can even just get off, for example, the train as well, or the trams leading from that University Island, and just easily walk through this entire complex. So we also have that highway that's leading from that stacked bridge, and like I said, it's kind of high compared to the terrain, so I somehow need to bring it down, and also ideally bring it down to even all of these different levels. So I decided that I'm going to use some kind of a loop. By the way, this is heavily edited footage. I was just experimenting a lot with all of these different layouts of the roads and buildings, and this is, I don't know how many changes I did in this area. So this is the last iteration with this particular, I'm not really sure what it is in real life. It is a real life building. I think it's some kind of a train yard, a maintenance facility or some kind of building like that. Kind of old, built kind of a long time ago. I'm obviously talking about that ball-shaped building, the golf ball building, right? So I placed that in that like a spiral road that's leading from the highway and into the industrial zone. There's like a little intersection there that's also crossing the light rail, and then it just loops more down towards that, well, not complete bottom level, but the level where, well, basically the rest of the industrial zone is going to be. But there's pretty much like a hole, because that golf ball building is not really placed on that, on this level that I'm building right now, but it's even lower than that. So there's like a little hole that I'm later going to fill with some kind of pipes and all kinds of detailing like that. So that's hopefully going to look very good. Now, the purpose of this industrial area. So I'm thinking that it's definitely something high tech. It might even be part of, or partially, it might be a research center, some kind of industrial research center. I was maybe thinking that it might be somehow related to just some advanced growing or agriculture, because I am planning, I'm not really yet decided completely, but I am planning maybe on adding some kind of agricultural area around here. So I don't know, maybe it could be part of that, or maybe it could be just something completely different and just some general, really high-tech industry, manufacturing, or something like that. I wasn't really thinking much about the purpose of this place because I was more concentrating really on just making it look interesting with all these different buildings and elevations, right? Now, hopefully, the industrial zone is going to be mostly functional. I am kind of taking care of some of these buildings to, well, most of these buildings to have road access, and to, if they don't have road access, to just convert them into procedural objects so that there's not going to be any problems with that. I suppose that this industrial zone should perform better compared to that original industrial zone, because this one, well, I'm actually not sure about it completely now that I think of it, but I think it should be in the 25 tiles, on the maps, because it's much closer to the downtown. So hopefully it's not really going to have some issues, just like the original industrial zone with like bringing cargo to it and things like that. But we will see. It's probably still a bit smaller than the original industrial zone, but not by much, because footprint-wise, it definitely is, but the density of the buildings here are definitely much higher. This industrial zone is much denser, and it's definitely not going to be finished by today's episode. I am going to build a couple of more buildings. I think I can spoil it a bit. I'm going to start with that today, so it's not really a spoiler that much, but I'm going to build a tiny, like a pier for some river boat traffic, and I was even thinking of adding something similar on the lake that we artificially created on that map change video a long time ago already, because I might even add maybe more rivers going into that lake, and maybe it could be some kind of a hub for some river traffic that might be bringing goods into this industrial zone. So that's kind of the reason why I also did that railway. If you remember that spiral railway from last episode, that's leading from the bridge, the stacked bridge from last time, and it's just looping into this area. It goes underground just so we can get the necessary elevation, because like I said, the stacked bridge is much higher than the terrain. So if I want to have some somewhat realistic grade for the railway, then we have to loop it like that. And it's going to the opposite side of this peninsula, and that's kind of where I would maybe like to add sometime in the future, maybe some more piers or something like that. But even if I don't, it's necessary to have that loop so that we can finally connect that cargo railway to the railway that's coming from the airport all the way on the other side of the map, because we already prepared some sort of railway, industrial railway, coming just on the side, really, if you remember, on that suburb residential area. And it's also going underground there, and I haven't really decided how it's going to continue forward. So eventually that needs to be somehow connected. But extending this industrial areas, just so the railway is just going to go through it, eventually might be a good idea. Industrial areas are always kind of nice to build in interesting projects. So maybe we are going to do it much larger. Anyway, what am I doing in here? So this is going to be just a tiny little pier for some kind of a small volume of the river traffic. It's going to have these railways, and they are going to go into that building. I'm later going to put like nice door in there, so it's going to look more believable, and it's going to look like it might just bring goods into that main building, manufacturing building maybe, and there it can be just distributed to the entire complex. Because if you look at it in the cinematics more thoroughly, you're going to notice that this entire complex is basically one huge building, right? Just made of different kinds of structures in City Skylines, yeah, sure. But we can even imagine that there are a lot of things here underground. By the way, in here, I'm just copy-pasting some of these formations of some of these containers from the airport, because, like I said, the railway that's going to go into this area is going to be connected to the airport eventually. So it only makes sense that the same kind of containers are appearing in both of those areas, detailing projects, right? So that's exactly what I'm just filling the area with. And just to have some continuity as well with some of the previous episodes, I am going to put some of these rocks on the riverbanks in here, especially on the tip of the land, because there is just going to look much better. So in here, I'm basically just doing some kind of last detailing, because I already placed the buildings into the shape that I kind of want to have it in. And there are not that many buildings in this area because I really wanted to just use big footprint buildings to fill this place rather quickly, which is why I kind of like doing industrial areas. For example, the original industrial area that I did, that also was possible to build really, really quickly because I was using that car manufacturing buildings. I think the buildings from real life as well. So those are huge and you can just place them a couple of times and you're done basically. So in this area, I did something similar, even though the buildings I'm using here are a bit smaller, but majority of this industrial zone is made of that high tech building, the big building that I placed originally, and that golf ball building anyway. So most of the rest of the projects in here around are just some smaller structures to really fill the area. And that was a very satisfying thing to do, by the way, because these kinds of industrial projects, I'm kind of repeating myself, but they are just very, very easy to build because you have a lot to choose from. There are a lot of industrial buildings in the workshop, and because they're big, you don't really need to use that many of them. So it's much easier than compared to, for example, in Altengrad when I'm building some of the residential blocks where I just have to use different buildings all the time, and it's sometimes a bit frustrating because I need to recycle some of them. But in the industrial places, it doesn't really matter if you think about it, because industry, it doesn't matter if it's going to have the same buildings in different industrial areas because it makes sense. The factories kind of need to look similar, so that's also very convenient. So now that I'm thinking of it, I'm kind of making sure that I'm going to do some more of these industrial areas, convincing myself that I'm probably going to continue with these industrial areas. Anyway, this is what I was looking forward to. So this is the beacon. I think it's actually called the beacon in the game, and it's obviously made by the Quad Rioters, and it's part of, I'm not really sure if they come in pack, but you have seen these triangles before in Aurelia on the edges of that upper lake where we built the island city. So that's where I used these triangles, but without the beacon. And in here, I decided to really use that beacon. It's a very nice looking structure, very futuristic, and I kind of needed some kind of a beacon in here because we are on the tip of this peninsula. It's kind of rocky. It makes sense that there is going to be some kind of a structure that's going to warn the ship. Obviously, Aurelia is a bit in the future, probably, so it's not really necessary. Maybe the ships are AI controlled or something like that, but maybe it's just a remnant of some past times, or maybe it's still needed. Maybe some kind of equipment is stored in there. I had to convert it into procedural objects because I didn't really like the triangle base that it was built on. So I got rid of that, and I'm not really sure if the building had some sort of functionality. Maybe it was flashing on the top or something, but I kind of wanted to retain that. So later I played with some lights that I put on top of it. It's not really that much visible in the cinematics because the lights are kind of tiny. I suppose that I could have played with it a bit more and get some better lighting. Anyway, this is something that I really wanted to do in this area, and I already did it, I think, in the dam project, in that in the big dam on the river. And that's going to be these kinds of holes into the terrain where I'm just going to put some kind of infrastructure, like, I don't know, air conditioning something, or some kind of air ducts, or equipment, electrical equipment, pipes, and all that, wires maybe. And this is something that I really like doing. I can't really say why, but it's just a nice, well, first of all, it's a nice way to just fill this area, compared to just putting buildings everywhere. And it's also going to add to the verticality of this place and going to make you think that maybe what you see on the surface is probably not everything from this entire industrial complex. So you can already see what's going on. So I'm basically just using this empty place on the surface to just cut this recessed sunken area into it, and I'm going to use the retaining walls, and obviously going to use all these different surfaces to just cover the shadows. Yeah, I know there is the mod to get rid of the shadows these days, but I didn't have it back when I was building this, because this is, again, in Aurelia, kind of old. So You're probably going to be telling me to get that mod, and I have to admit I actually didn't yet. But even if I did in these footages, it's not going to appear anyway in a couple more episodes. Actually, I'm not really sure if I'm going to be struggling with the shadows in some coming episodes, but I know of the mod. Okay, I know of its existence. I just didn't have it yet. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, I had to do the retaining walls and the surfaces around it. And even if I had the mod, I would have to do these kinds of surfaces, especially the pavement, and just make it look like it's very well, not natural, obviously completely artificial, but just so it's belonging into this area. And I'm going to do the exact same thing in a couple more areas around here. So, for example, near these tanks or containers, and in here especially, it's going to make more sense because if I'm going to put some pipes down here, it's going to make it look like these tanks are actually connected to the rest of the complex. Between each other, of course, as well. And maybe this place might be some kind of a refinery as well, partially at least. So it's just going to be connected to the outside world as well. So that's all a possibility. And this is exactly the satisfying moment of these kinds of detailing projects. So these pipes I have used back in that original industrial zone. They are quite old in the workshop, but they are absolutely amazing. I think I was using them in Altengrad as well, because these kinds of detailing projects are kind of universal, or detailing elements are kind of universal. You don't really need to just place them in any specific time period. Pipes are probably going to be here even in the future, so that's fine. And they just look incredible. I especially like how the surface in this place is kind of clean. And if you look at the pavement, I am going to put a couple of stains here and there because we are in the industrial zone still. But it's just looking how I'm not really sure how to describe it. You probably see it, right? How these holes in the terrain are kind of dirtier with the stains on the asphalt. That's exactly why I placed the asphalt inside of them, because it's just going to be like a black base where all of these detailings are going to stand out a bit more. The decals especially, right? So that's exactly what I'm also going to do down here on the surface of that golf ball building. I think I did convert it into PO eventually, because I'm not even sure why. I suppose because it didn't have entrance for vehicles really on the bottom level, so I didn't really want to bother with that. But that flat surface there, that's going to be covered with asphalt and all that kind of detailing, just like we did before, and it's going to look really, really good. And it's going to give you the idea that, yeah, maybe this place is connected to like a very large surrounding area with some kind of pipes. So, I'm not really sure what this building's purpose might exactly be, but I'm going to just leave it to your imagination. Yeah, I'm just building it, but what the purpose is, I'm going to leave that up to you. So that's exactly the pipes that I'm doing here. And originally this building is supposed to have railways coming into it, but in here I'm just going to use those portals or the door gates for these pipes. So going to use these ones at slightly different elevations here and there. I'm going to copy paste them, and I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to hide completely that asphalt level, because that's looking kind of nice. I want to have it visible, and also these slightly smaller pipes, at different elevations. Also, I had to do some kind of retaining walls on the side of this pit. So on the left here, that's just made by the building. That's kind of also holding the light rail tracks. But on this side, I had to do some kind of actual walls, and not just below the road that's spiraling down, but also below this cargo railway. So I decided I'm going to use these. I think they're called something with Japanese, some kind of Japanese seawall. No, actually that's not the seawall. That's just a retaining wall, whatever. And I'm going to pair it with these pillars here and there. I'm going to make them go like this. So they go right on the side of the road, and just like this, some kind of like ribs in this retaining wall. It's just a decorative element, of course. It doesn't really serve any purpose for the actual railway. And something similar I did below that road. So this kind of detailing is mostly done. In this place, I'm going to do something similar with the pillars, but I'm just going to gradually transition it into just a cliff with rocks or something like that. I had to also put some more pillars under the light rail. At first I was thinking that there might be like a second hole in this light rail loop, but it was kind of difficult to do that. Again, I had to do a lot of experimentation in this area, so this is just the final result, okay? So this took much longer than what you are seeing here in the time lapse. Also, just doing this this kind of, well, not really detailing, but just positioning of some infrastructure and buildings on these slopes was not exactly easy. So for example, this building right here, I had to convert into PO. I think I did it eventually, just so the terrain around it is kind of going to blend in a bit better. Oh yeah, I did it right here. So this road is just completely flat in front of the building. It's going to go inside of it, and inside of it I'm going to place the cubes, the cube industrial buildings, so that there is actually going to be some traffic going in and out. And I also had to put that gate, the open kind of fake gate in there, so that it's going to appear like the vehicles actually have some entrance. And I think that's going to be something that I'm probably going to do going into the future as well, because a lot of these industrial buildings, they might have entrances where I don't exactly want them or need them, so I might provide my own, right? If I don't exactly want to have the building, for example, facing the entrance roads, for example, these buildings right here, I'm not really sure if they're facing the harbor area or the dock area. I think they are, so that's probably a bad example, but there are a couple of buildings here that are not really facing the road, that are facing actually the opposite way, or like 90 degrees off or something like that. And because they are kind of big, they have only like a small entrance place into the building, usually in the center of one side that should be facing the road. And if you don't really want to do that for like detailing purposes or something, then you have to kind of either convert it into PO or just deal with the fact that the building is not going to function at all. It's probably going to cripple your entire supply for cargo. So that's not really what I want to do here. I want to pay more attention in Aurelia to the functionality of the game as well. So I'm trying to make these buildings have entrances, and if they can't, I'm just going to convert them into PO. I'm kind of repeating myself, sorry, but it's kind of important to really have that, even for the traffic in this area. The traffic is not really all that big in this place just yet. I'm gonna probably look into it a bit more. Maybe I'm going to even revisit the old industrial zone of the city, so that we're gonna get to the bottom of why there isn't that much cargo traffic moving around this place, because maybe even it's the outside limits as well. So I'm gonna take a look at it. I just completely didn't care in the past, but right now I would really like to put some more cargo traffic into this place. So this is just a couple of warehouses that I'm putting under the highway. I think that's looking very good, how the highway is just going on top of on the rooftops, basically, of all these warehouses, of all these buildings. And a couple of towers, offices mostly, are just on the sides, for example, this intersection and around this highway. So that's looking really good. This intersection is going to be the main entrance into this entire area. I'm not really sure if I completely ditched that idea, but I think I'm going to make that intersection 4-way, or maybe I'm just going to do another 3-way intersection somewhere else on that highway to make traffic go into some different parts of this industrial zone that we're going to do later. But right now it's not really that important. So this light rail was a bit of a headache, because it was going on the side of that railway, which was not on the same level, and at the same time I had to somehow match it to those buildings that I was putting there. So I eventually decided that it's just going to be a tree line in there that's just going to mask the terrain differences, and it's working rather okay, so that's fine. Now, this last detailing that I'm doing here is for the stop of the light rails. So, like I said, it's basically just going on top of this building, which is also forming some sort of a retaining wall on the side of that golf ball building's pit. And that means that we need to do some kind of retaining walls and all these kinds of surfaces here and there to make it final. to finally make it final. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Also, this area is not exactly ideal, so I had to use a lot of node controller for these intersections and just put all kinds of surfaces, gravel mostly, in here. And finally I decided that it's a bit of a more headache than I wanted to, so I just covered a lot of these areas with some green decorations, as you can see here. And that is pretty much all done. So eventually it turned out looking great. Like I said, it was a lot of experimentation. You can't really see that in the time lapse because I decided to leave it out. But yeah, it was a lot of work for this one. But as we can see with this before and after shot, it was well worth it. So this place was completely filled by the industry. I know that I said in the last episode that around that public transport hub, I would probably like to do it a bit more low density, maybe even some residential low density areas. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I might want to expand with this industrial zone even past that main tram avenue. I'm not really sure about it just yet, but maybe just a couple of warehouses, or maybe I'm going to think of some way of just doing more of this high-tech style, vertical high-tech style, because this is something that I really like doing. It's a lot of work, sure, but I just like it. I just really, really like it. Now that I'm looking at the place, I could have probably add more smoke effects. There's one smoke, but that's because that's actually a functioning building. I think that's the vanilla geothermal plant or something like that. So that's actually looking surprisingly good. But for example, this main smokestack in here, that probably deserved some kind of a smoke effect as well. And also those two small ones, I completely forgot about placing those. So that's like a nice detail. This long building, this high-tech industrial building with the maybe solar panels on the roof, I'm thinking that I might extend it into the rest of this industrial area later. So that might also be a good idea. But anyway, in the next episode, because I didn't really have any specific plans for the expansion of this place, we are going to return back into the downtown area because I really wanted to continue doing some of those canals. If you remember back when we did even in front of the main train station, and we also did it quite recently with that big commercial block episode, with some of those residential blocks as well. So I would like to do a third canal, or at least like a start of a third canal system in the next episode. So that's going to be something to definitely look forward to. But like I said today, I do have some more plans for this industrial area. So hopefully we are also going to work on that later. All right. Thank you for watching. If you liked today's episode, please click the thumbs up button, write a comment, share, and subscribe. And you can also become a channel member to directly support what I do here. Big thank you to all the current supporters. In the next episode, we will move back into the downtown to work right next to that big super interchange back from episode 1. So stay tuned for that. Take care and goodbye.